always used to lay you clean up the messes. Down on my knees, thought I couldn't stand up on my own. Turns out sometimes you're stronger alone.
Hey, Mike Shimwell here, host of the Shunned podcast. If you want to tell your story, buy a t-shirt, maybe some merch, maybe get some additional resources, you can do so at shunnedpodcast.com. If you want professional help to heal and recover from life in a cult so that you can figure out who you are and what you want out of this life, or maybe you just want to figure out where the patterns from the past might still be showing up in your life today, you can find help at exjwhelp.com. Again, that's exjwhelp.com. And every episode of the Shun podcast has helpful links in the podcast and YouTube descriptions. So if you need something, you can always look there. And now let's meet our guest.
My name is Darrin. I was raised one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and I was a Jehovah's Witness basically for, I would say, 35 years, and I am shunned.
All right, Darrin, so how did you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place?
I was raised in it. I'm one of 4 other siblings. I have an identical twin brother, and I was raised in it. My mother was taught it by my aunt. My father was not, and my aunt showed my mom a book that was the Live Forever book, I believe is what it was. And she said that when she saw the picture of the angels being cast down to the earth in an image, that it was like the truth was revealed to her. So that was the story she would tell growing up to us, and making, the religion mystical and powerful, and in such a way that, you hear stories growing up about miracles happening at a door, things like that. Those are the kind of the presentation that it was given to me my whole life.
Wow,
So
that's a very specific image, a very specific thing to have impacted her so much.
Yeah, I mean, I would hear, you've heard those stories growing up. A woman was at the door and a man behind the door had just murdered somebody, and he didn't kill this sister. And the guy said that there were 2 big men standing behind her because there's like these angels, stuff like that. So, you'd hear these dumb stories that just, you can't prove them one way or the other. They're just a story, but that's the kind of thing that was sort of brought up to me, those kinds of stories, on top of rigorous, Bible study every week. Now, I guess I could say I was born in Florida. So I was in Florida as a kid, and we actually went to a congregation where Venus and Serena Williams were as kids. We were their little buddies, but we didn't, as little, my twin brother and I, we didn't really know them or anything at the time. We only learned about this later as young adults and stuff. So my dad, then he left us when I was like 5 years old. 4 or 5 years old, I think it was affairs and stuff like that, and drinking. But it was more than that. It was kind of like there was an expectation of who he was supposed to be, probably because my mom became a Jehovah's Witness, and he quit drinking. I learned this for 6 months, studied and all this kind of stuff, and then just didn't want any part of it. So he left, and we were sort of left on our own. And then my mom met a guy in Florida who was another witness, and he was single, and he had witness family in another state in the north. And so my mom dated him for like 2 weeks or something crazy. We'd known him for a long time, but there's a group of witnesses who all lived on one street in Florida. They all lived on the same street, and there's just a group of them down this row. And I remember going to one house, and you could walk down the street and go to the other witness's house, as a little kid, stuff like that. And as my mom met this guy, they got married fast, and it was a little wedding at another brother's house. A brother that I actually really respected growing up. He's not alive anymore. He died of cancer, but nice guy. What you would picture a spiritual man, a spiritual man. His story was coming out of the world. And these are the kind of stories that were sort of presented to me as a kid. I was a boxer in the world, this guy, I was this tough guy, street trouble. And then I became a witness, and so it straightened his life out, kind of thing. So I respected this guy. So anyway, we moved north because my new stepdad's family is all from this town. And so and a caravan of other witnesses, we all just kind of drive to this other state and move here. And we live with my new grandparents and that I just met and lived with them while we, settled and found a place. And we found a place, and I grew up on a farm in the country and went to elementary school here. And then at fifth grade, I remember this day. So fifth grade, parent teacher conference, we have to wait in the car, and my mom goes in parent teacher conference, whatever, and my twin brother and I. My mom comes out of this school meeting and she's crying. We have no idea what's going on, and we're like, "What, Mom? What's going on?" And uh she just, I don't know why this is, I don't know why this choked me up, but
Okay.
you know she just she said, "My boys are going to the world." And I have no idea what I did. I have no clue to this day. um but then that was it. I wasn't in school in it anymore, and so I was homeschooled, but I didn't get any schooling. I was given books that my mom goes and does her cleaning jobs during the day, and I stay home and do my schoolwork that I'm supposed to be responsible for myself.
Yeah, I mean,
You know,
fifth grade, right? You said so, 9, 10, whatever.
yeah.
You're
So right. So there's this perspective from kids I did go to school with. They thought I'd moved away. They would see me in the summer at like a public swimming pool to go swimming, and they would think I was back visiting one of my parents because my parents separated. They nobody knew, anything. And so I didn't really have friends. My friends were other Jehovah's Witness kids, and we'll get to that. But um
Can I
yeah,
ask, is
yeah,
what made that moment or those moments hard? Was it more about just like you had a little group of kids there that were maybe even your friends that you just suddenly boom vanished from?
it's
Or is it more that
it's
your mom kind of felt such a way about you guys just because of
it's a
things?
lot of things, man. It's being an adult and telling these things out loud
Mm,
and realizing that, oh, a lot of the struggles and traumas that you face could have been very avoidable if there was some intervention of like, "Yo, Darren's mom, you're doing really crazy stuff. This isn't okay. This is not normal to do this," you know. And I'm thinking it's normal and that we're all special because we know something the rest of the world doesn't. So anyway, homeschooling. So by the way, if you hear a rooster crowing, it has nothing to do with a cock crowing twice. I have like 26 chickens. So
no
there's no
worries.
denying in here.
We will not read into it or start a
Yeah.
new cult or anything like that. It's
If
all
you want
good.
to, I think I'd make a great cult leader, but no, kidding. Anyway, so we moved to the north and we're living in, I'm out of school now. I'm homeschooling and getting no schooling at all and just teaching myself whatever. I have Jehovah's Witness friends. One of them, some of them are my now my ex stepdad, but my ex stepdad's family, so step cousins. And then I have friends that moved to the area that had family in the congregation. And one of them, I'll say his name was Jake, and he was a really good friend of mine growing up. And we did everything together. And he was made to homeschool too. So we were homeschooling buddies, and in the summer we would spend weeks with each other. I'd be at his house, he'd be at my house. We'd sleep outside on the trampoline and camp out because we had no air conditioning growing up, and just lived it up, man. Just did stuff out on a farm in the country, tried to get into trouble on a farm, whatever. And so that's what I did. I'll say one story about somebody I liked. This one's kind of tough to tell, but I'll try my best. Um, I didn't really have a dad growing up, but there was a guy who was, when we moved here, he didn't have kids, but he was newly married to a sister, and he was just a young, cool guy, and took me and my brother under his wing, took me to see The Lion King in the theater, took me to see Home Alone 2 in the theater. When he had his second daughter, he had my twin brother and I spend the night at his house like the week after she was born, just to hang out there and it's so strange when I think back on it. It's like this guy like really loved us, you know. He was like just bought my little brother like a Power Wheel, you know, just this gentle soul of a guy. And he was driving home from work. He worked third shift and fell asleep and died,
Oh,
and fell asleep at the wheel and killed him.
oh,
And
sorry.
I remember at the time, like as a young kid, you know, a kid in school would have a guidance counselor who would say, you know, this kid needs grief counseling or he needs somebody to talk to. And none of that ever happened. You know,
Jehovah's Witnesses don't know how to take care of
the grief
people.
counseling is I can cry on a dime because I have grief. Like I have
Mm,
PTSD from some of this stuff.
of course.
And it gets pretty tough to when you bring it up. It's like, bam, it's like it'll make you cry right away. So
Well,
really love this guy. Jason was his name. And no counseling for that. It's just like, bam, father figure gone. And so anyway, then my stepdad, you know, I'm growing up, my stepdad is a truck driver. Now I don't want to talk bad about him because I recently sort of started talking to him again, and he's just a nice guy. And he was in a terrible marriage with a Jehovah's Witness woman who's crazy. So um he's gone all the time truck driving and stuff like that. The marriage just kind of falls apart. My mom um expected, you know, the Jehovah's Witness thing, and it just wasn't enough, I
hmm,
guess. And there was other things where like a brother was getting uh emotionally inappropriate with my mom, and there was a whole thing with that. And then I had a thing for that brother's daughter because this guy was married and really liked her, and it was a big deal, so we were cut off from that family because that was handled, but we still went to the same Kingdom Hall. We just had no association with them, but I didn't know why. And so I would always secretly call this girl I liked through the operator so that I could get through because they had her number blocked, but I had no idea about any of it. So we ended up getting a massive phone bill once that was like huge, and my mom wanted to kill me. But it was because I was calling my girlfriend, who I wasn't allowed to talk to because of the family thing that had happened when I was a kid with that husband liking my mom when my mom's marriage was bad to my stepdad. So there was all that was never really made aware to me. So you fast forward, and of course, you know, I get baptized at 14, not because I was like, I'm compelled to. It was the silent pressure, you know. It's kind of like that's what you do. I don't go to school. I can't go have a career. You know, I've always been like so I grew up just no schooling, movies, just watched a lot of movies. So I was very creative in that aspect. I was a very good artist. I can just draw, just pick it up on my own. But I remember being at like my mom's parents who were not Jehovah's Witnesses, but one of the parents, my grandparents, was Pentecostal. So my mom was raised in this really extreme, like Baptist, I think it was Baptist when she was a kid, but it changed to Pentecostal. So it was the same extreme sort of religion kind of thing. And so I remember being at their house and my mom they're talking about how good of an artist I was as like a young kid. She's like, he could be this, you know, he could this. And I remember hearing this and I'm like, I could do that. You know, you feel so good about it.
yeah,
And then
somebody's actually seeing you and
yeah, if it was like
praising and
something,
validating you.
we'll get to more of that, but there raises another point. But then my mom just goes, haven't you ever heard of a starving artist?
Oh dear.
And so that's the ambition that was given to me of who I can be and what I can become growing up. So you're a Jehovah's Witness, and that's what you are. You know, you go get simple jobs like cleaning jobs, washing windows, you know, whatever. Anyway,
Been there,
so
done that. I understand.
right, me too.
Yeah.
I'm a
But
jack of all
don't
trades.
but don't
Yeah,
use any other skills or natural abilities that you may have. Those things are worthless. We can't have you feeling good about yourself.
right, right. And so, you know, there's a lot of things too growing up as a kid, being in elders meetings. We had a slumber party as kids, and we all stayed up at night and like dared each other to streak naked in the country and run around the yard, you know, like, ah, he's running, you know, these kinds of things that boys get in trouble
Yes.
for. And we ended up in the elders meeting like 2 years after the fact. And I remember I didn't even know what this was, like why this was happening. I was 10 years old. And I kind of keep backtracking a little bit, but I was 10 years old and I remember sitting outside of this elders meeting door, listening to my twin brother bawling his eyes out, and I have no idea why. And they're just making him feel guilty about something. And at the time I didn't know, but I knew hearing that I'm going in there and they're going to try and pin something on me. So I was prepared to just lie to him no matter what it was. And I did. I mean, they went in there and they were like, did you run around naked and streak through the yard? And I'm like, no, that was the other guys. It wasn't me, you know? And they're like, okay, you answered everything correctly, and all this other stuff. And then I remember after that meeting, just being bewildered and wondering just not having an understanding of what I was a part of, but you don't know as a 10-year-old. And I remember my mom coming up to me behind my brother and I was like, I just want to let you know, guys, I didn't really like the way that they talked to you. And I'm sorry that happened, but it's over with and we'll not do that again. But continues to take me back to the same fucking place that sorry for the cuss word. I don't know if I'm supposed
No,
to
don't
cuss.
worry.
Okay.
No
All right.
problem.
Same place that if somebody talked badly to my child in a way that I thought was not appropriate, I wouldn't be taking them back there. It's like, duh.
Several
Anyway,
times a week to be taught
yes.
by those same
Oh,
individuals who just crossed boundaries.
exactly.
Yes.
So, yeah. And anyway, so growing up to the conventions, the meetings, the assemblies, they were all like, I mean, you didn't miss. It was a big deal to miss the meeting. And you had to have a good reason, Um,
And back
driving
then,
in.
what was it like? Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday, like 3 times a week?
Yep, and service,
No.
field service. And I was homeschooled, so I had no excuse as to why I couldn't go on service in the mornings. So me and my really good friend Jake, we had a competition once with his grandparents saying we could place more knowledge books than they could. And we placed I had 19 in one morning and he had 18. And it was really just being a cute kid running around the neighborhood in a suit and just being like, hey, you want the knowledge of everlasting life? Giggity giggity goo, here you go. Like, of course I placed them. They were free.
Yeah, they were
Sure,
free, and you're a kid,
sure,
and then
kid.
who's going to turn you down?
Sure, kid, go away now. Like they weren't even a return visit. I never went back. You don't get anything anyway. So that was the childhood. So then you go to get more approval because the idea of being a Jehovah's Witness is to make sure you're doing all the Jehovah's Witness stuff so that all the other Jehovah's Witnesses still think you're a Jehovah's Witness and you're the best Jehovah's Witness. So that's kind of how it is. Now, I have an older brother who, by the time he was 17, he was an elder. He was the
Wait, 17,
host.
an elder,
17.
not a ministerial servant, but
I'm
an
serious. No, okay, maybe it was 18, but at 17 he was an MS, and like a year later he's like an elder. Now, if I'm wrong, it would only be a very short time span because he was like the chosen one. Like people
wow.
love my brother. It's like they call him like the heart of gold, and
I
he's
mean,
the
I was the
ideal.
golden boy to some degree, but I was a servant at 18. Usually,
Mhm.
elders, you have to be somewhere in your 20s usually before they'll consider that.
Yeah.
Uh, but wow, he
Yeah.
was a go getter.
Yeah. Now, as a child, my oldest brother too, he is a very good artist too. And I remember hoping one day he was going to go to Bethel and be one of their artists, and stuff like that. And anyway, that didn't
Because if
work.
you have one of those skills, it must be employed in
Yes.
service of the greater good through Jehovah's organization,
Yeah.
not just for your own edification
Right.
or heaven forbid for some quote worldly company.
Right. I'll get to this, but remind me, Ken Flodine tried to recruit me for my video editing, but we'll get there. This is in 2013, but anyway. So I get baptized at 14 because of the silent pressure. 2 months after being baptized, I'm in a judicial elders meeting because I knew about something that somebody had done, a friend of mine, where he had you know, had sex or something with somebody or made out, whatever. And I didn't tell about it. So it's like sharing in their sin. And I almost got like publicly reproved and stuff for not telling and all this stuff. So that always stood out to me, like, make sure you tell on people. Otherwise, like you know, you'll lose your whole family,
And what a great way to control people, right? To make you
Right.
responsible for what everybody else does as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
May I ask, you
Mhm,
said that was right after your baptism. What
mhm.
what was it that so at 14 you got baptized? You said, it's kind of the only way. Well, what else were you gonna do? You were homeschooled, blah blah blah. But like, was there anything in it for you when you got baptized? Did you did you feel like you were doing something or connecting in any way? Or was it
No,
kind of like the next right step, the next
it's the
thing to
next right
do?
step. It's just
Okay.
what you do.
Okay.
It's what you do. You don't have anybody telling you what you're good at. You don't have anybody telling you your strengths. Uh, it's only criticisms about how to be a better Jehovah's Witness. There's no healthy conversation about who you are, and I'm so proud of you. Or, hearing somebody tell you that you did a really good job is, you know, we'll get to anxiety later, but when you're not allowed to associate with people who are considered worldly your whole life, and you literally have to be careful about those conversations, once you start actually having them, one thing I had to teach myself to stop doing is shaking uncontrollably,
Oh,
like trembling, because of an overabundance of emotion, of joy, and just enjoying it, but also the whatever's happening in my programmed brain telling me that this is wrong. And so you're having conflicting, like you're doing this, and I'm like in a conversation, and people had no idea why the hell I was shaking so bad, and I didn't know. So I'm kind of jumping ahead, but
yeah, but that's so sad,
mhm,
that we're taught to be afraid of
mhm,
people on the outside,
mhm,
or that our only praise could come
mhm,
from the only way we could feel good would be to do exactly what we were programmed to do.
mhm.
And that, I often refer to your baptism as like your birthday. It's like the one
Yeah,
time in your life that is like that day is sometimes about you, and maybe people will praise you for it, or maybe you get to pick where you go for dinner or
yeah,
something. It's like the bare minimum of perhaps getting a good feeling out of a social connection.
hmm,
There's just not much else to it. And then, later you're talking to other people, and yeah, we feel awkward. There's social isolation our whole lives. We're taught to keep people at arm's length, to never get close. They really put a wedge in between us and others, and between us and ourselves, and feeling good about ourselves and who we are,
exactly. That's
so that
exactly
they can
right.
control us.
Yeah. So my thinking was pretty controlled,
Mhm.
and I remember when I was baptized, I remember, the drive to the assembly is a 2-hour drive, and just driving back, and not and having conversations with myself, just not going, I don't feel any different. I was 14 years old. There was just nothing to really, whatever. I'm more Jehovah's Witness now than I was before, when really I was just inducted into a cult. I didn't have that understanding. They
Yeah,
now
and
have
now
more
you can
control
be
over you.
shunned by
Yeah.
that cult,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now shunning comes into play. Now they have something extra to hold over your head for the rest of it.
Exactly. So it's just like, but I went on with life being a Jehovah's Witness and stuff. And I remember going to high school for driver's ed. That was the only thing that I got to go to school for, because I had to go take driver's ed. And I remember being there, and these kids like, yo, Darrin, what are you, dude? What are you back in school now? Or so, it's like, no, just here for driver's ed and stuff. And telling people I've been homeschooling this whole time. They're like, we never see you, dude. Like, and trying to help them understand what it was I did, and it just didn't make any sense. I was in driver's ed when 9/11 happened, and yeah, and I remember being like sent to driver's ed when 9/11, waking up that morning and going to my mom wanting us to take tracts to school because people are going to have questions, and for us to give tracts to people.
Never let
And
a tragedy go to waste. The ambulance
exactly, so
chasers of religion. Let's go.
yes,
Let's go get them.
so let's exploit this tragedy
Yes.
rather than just be a good listener for people that might have just lost a family member, whatever.
Or hurting yourself because you just watched something horrendous happen, and you're a
Yeah.
normal human being with empathy
Well,
for people who are hurting.
one thing I failed to leave out, which I don't know how I did this, is one thing that shaped my childhood was when I was 9 or 10 years old. They showed the movie Schindler's List unedited on TV, and we watched it as little kids. And my mom was telling us that that will happen in the Great Tribulation. And I remember just, dude, to this day, imagine being a kid, you've never seen a single thing of extreme violence, and you see people getting shot in the head, waiting their turn.
Well,
I
Jehovah's
mean,
Witnesses have no qualms sharing violence with you
no.
if it's for their own,
And it, dude, it traumatized me my whole
yeah,
life.
brainwashing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so my whole life I was scared of random acts of violence. It literally was a fear I had. I would think about it at the Kingdom Hall about people coming in with guns to kill us. You know, those are things that I thought about all the time. I became obsessed with self-defense and things like that as like a young guy. And I had no father, and a father is supposed to instill that confidence in a man. And that just wasn't there. And you're not supposed to go learn war and all this stuff. So we'll get to where that leads. But we go from some of those things. I get baptized and everything, and then I start secretly going to jujitsu classes at where I can't tell you where because then you'll know where I live. with some top-notch people, you know, like some world champions and stuff like that. But I was doing it like secretly. So I had like during this time, you know, I'm secretly kind of doing this, but it's not regular. It's just when I can sneak and do it and stuff like that. But I'm also at the time kind of depressed because you're stuck in the matrix and you don't have any idea what you're a part of, but you don't know that that's the problem because you're not allowed to have that conversation with yourself. And so I start like, I'm interested in this same girl that is, you know, I'm not supposed to be interested in, and in all this stuff at the same time. We start dating, and you know, kind of secretly, but it's at the opposed by both parties on both sides of our parents. And then I move out of my mom's house. I get a job at a printing press as a printer for a newspaper in a local town full time. And I'm 17, and I move out on my own at 17. And I get like a small studio apartment.
Can I ask what was the impetus to push you
My girlfriend.
to moving out that quickly? It was
It was
just so
my,
that you could have
yeah,
a
she
girlfriend.
like helped me just think that I could move out. And she's like, you know, as witnesses, we're dating to get married, so we're going to get married. It was more like telling me what I'm doing. You know, I'm marrying, you know, dating this person, and the person I'm dating is telling me what I'm supposed to be doing. You know, it's just so, dude, it's so weird.
More control to some
It's
degree,
just
but
weird. Yeah,
okay.
but this is just, I'm giving everybody the benefit of the doubt as much as I can in this conversation. Even when I talk about these qualities and things that happened or these things that these people did, you have to understand too. I have to understand, otherwise I become filled with rage. Uh, is that they're programmed this way?
Well, yeah, their intent is
Hmm.
good. Their
Yeah,
methodology is abusive.
right.
And they don't understand or see that they are given a narrative that supports the abusive behavior. And so they play that out. It's also what everybody around them's doing, right? So you grow up in an
Hmm.
upside down backwards world,
Yeah,
you believe things are good that are
yeah.
upside down and backwards. That's
Well,
just,
yeah, and you're given limited information too to
yeah,
compare
and
it
you're not
to.
allowed to look at information. You're a
Right.
bad person if you do.
Right. And my, at the time, too, only example of like a loving married spouse, there wasn't one. There was just what the Watchtower showed me it was supposed to be like. There was no, you know, you didn't talk about sex. I never got to see what my, you know, mom and dad were like affectionate with each other. I just didn't see it. I only saw it from like a friend who was a Jehovah's Witness and him and his mom and dad a little bit, but not just, you're
Well,
not realistic.
what
Yeah.
are
So,
Jehovah's Witnesses supposed to marry for? What are the things that they're supposed to look for in a marriage mate? Is it that we
mhm,
have great communication together, that we know how to fight fair, that we appreciate each other's qualities, that we truly love one another? Or is it like, hey, how do you act in the presence of a chaperone at all times? And does this person go to all the meetings? Do they go out in the field ministry? Do they check the Jehovah's Witness
mhm,
boxes? Are they active in the congregation? Well, then this is a spiritual person, and then therefore perhaps a good marriage mate. But there's
mhm.
nothing about who we are as individuals and how we actually mesh as two human beings.
Right,
Most witness marriages are set up to fail,
right.
and
So,
they do.
yeah. So, uh, moved out and just sort of dating and stuff like that. Um, trying to think here. So then I get engaged. I propose. We get engaged. I move into a bigger apartment, and then let's see. Oh, and then like I try out to be a pioneer. I wanted an auxiliary pioneer because I could do it, and I wanted to show. I was the new spiritual head that I was going to be. I was going to get married and all this stuff, and they told me I couldn't. They said my hours were, I missed some hours one month that were only like 2 hours. And then also your fiance is not baptized. She's just a publisher. And I'm like, she's not baptized? I didn't even think about it. And I'm like, who gives a shit? You know? And so then I can't do that. And so then she gets baptized like a year later, or like months later, something like that. Just so that, but I still never became an auxiliary pioneer. It just, so it's like you never really, like I never amounted to anything as a Jehovah's Witness. I could never please anybody. And so
Yeah,
fast
never
forward,
being good enough is the common
right,
refrain of the ex-witness. No matter what I did, it was never enough.
right. So fast forward 2014, or sorry, 2004. Um in April I get married, and I'm 18 years old, she's 18, and you get married. That's just what you do. And working at this printing place, have an apartment together, and we're just two people being Jehovah's Witnesses, being married. Now, she had been on antidepressants since she'd like 13 years old. This is another side. I've tried not to tell too much of her stuff because it's probably not my place, but it's like she had tried committing suicide when she was like 10 years old by swallowing a bunch of pills, or 13 years old. And then they put her on antidepressants. So she was on antidepressants our entire marriage and dating her and everything. After we got married, I started getting like depressed, just things, you feel it inside of you. Like there's something not right, but you never know what it is. You just can't admit it to yourself because you're not allowed. And so I'm talking to my wife at the time and just saying, I'm depressed stuff. You need, I'm on antidepressants. You need them. So I go to this doctor, and I was 18 years old, and he's like, oh, you're anxious and stuff, and gives me Xanax. He's like, here's Xanax. So being raised a Jehovah's Witness and no school, I had no knowledge of drugs. I'd never tried anything. I didn't even try alcohol. Didn't even like alcohol. All of that. And so I'm taking Xanax, still not a self-aware person, because a self-aware person can observe themselves when they take a drug and say, hey, this is making me feel a certain way. But when you're not self-observant, you don't know that. You're just a brainless, indoctrinated Jehovah's Witness. So I'm on that, and just Xanax for anxiety, that kind of thing. Then like I quit the printing place. I get a job at a bank that's starting a computer technical firm. So I start training to be an IT tech, and I start learning everything about computers, but I had no high school diploma. I had nothing. And so it was like just finding jobs where I could just lie about my diploma, or they didn't care. And so finally, I get this IT, an A+ degree without a diploma, and I still had to go take the test at the college. But while I'm doing that, I realize there's certain things I got to have a diploma for. So I get online and I buy a diploma. You pay like $375 and you can buy an accredited diploma. I just could not pass anything math. I had no math skills. It's still this day, it's like a handicap. And because I had no school, there's no schooling.
Well, and yeah, it's abusive to withhold education from your
Right.
children.
And so, all that. And so then I go and sign up for a semester of college to get a couple things under my belt, and I had a terrible time with it. I'll tell you how I passed my first semester. The prerequisites that I took, the professor said that the class was so good and impressive with just their other assignments to the year, he's giving everybody an A, and you don't have to take the final. And to that during my Jehovah's Witness brain at the time was like, Jehovah's blessing me because I was going to fail this test, which wasn't true. It was just, we really were good, at whatever. So go on to just being married, doing computer jobs, just replacing technical medical equipment with computer stuff. My friend Jake, he meets a sister and gets married. We become friends with her. We kind of knew them growing up, so we kind of became friends and we would all hang out all the time. And 2 years after he got married, he just started spiraling, like something, wasn't right. He would borrow like Xanax from me, which is, not supposed to really do stuff like that. But it's like at the time, I also didn't realize that I had a problem, that I'm taking pills for everything, you know, ridiculous. So he spirals, and then it is him and his wife separate. He's not talking to anybody. I randomly see him show up to a meeting one Sunday, and his hair is really long. And I went up to him and tried to hug him and tell him, you know, and he elbowed me in the Kingdom Hall, like in the chest. And so, you hindsight's always 2020, but there's something wrong and nobody seems to know what it is, and it's extremely obvious. And this guy's just trying to cope with the fact that he probably doesn't believe in any of this stuff anymore. He can't tell anybody because then he'll lose everybody, and he's already lost his wife who left him.
Oh, he did. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
she left him. They're separated, and she's because he's just spiraling. He's drinking all the time for no reason. It just
Well, there's a reason.
there's a reason, and the reason could have, if somebody would have said it's okay to not be a Jehovah's Witness, it's okay to leave
Yeah.
and you're not wrong, this would have helped tremendously.
Yeah.
So I'm hanging out at my brother-in-law's one Sunday or Saturday night. My brother-in-law and I leave to go get things from the store because we're going to watch like a movie that night or something. And when we come back, my nephew is like, "Hey, Jake stopped by. He was looking for you." We're like, "Jake? We haven't seen him in a long time. What is he doing stopping by here?" We didn't understand, have the regular evening. And the next morning I get ready for the meeting, and I'm driving to the Kingdom Hall, and I'm like a block away from Jake's parents' house, and another brother calls and says, "Hey, did you hear about Jake? He killed himself." And I'm like, "What?" And I just hung up and drove around the block to his house, and there was one police car there. And my other friend is sitting on the front steps, and I just like I'm looking like what's going on, and I like look over, and there's a garage door, and the garage door is open, and there he is hanging with his tongue sticking out and his neck ripped open. And you just, you never unsee the flash image of that. It never goes away. Now I'm gonna have to rewind, because 2 years before that, another sister, and I'll say her name was Hannah, and she was 17 years old. She just turned 17, and she lived about 45 minutes away in another congregation, another town. And my twin brother really liked her. They kind of had a little thing for a while. And then she was kind of spiraling too. And her parents had to leave that morning before she drove herself to school. They left. Her parents had to go do something. Her mom had to have a surgery scheduled or something, like a knee surgery, something like that. And Hannah decided to go out to her dad's tool shed and take a tree harness and hang herself. So she hung herself. And then 2 years later, 2 or 3 years later, my friend Jake does the same thing. We were all traumatized by it because, when she killed herself, Jake was the one that came to my house where we all cried together and drank beers and tried to make sense of it. And
There's unfortunately a lot of suicide
yes,
around Jehovah's Witnesses, and
a ton of it.
had I not found what I did in 2008, I would have been one of those.
Yeah.
So I totally understand. And it's just really sad that this many people have been forced and backed into a corner where they feel there's no way out,
Right.
and where they've been impacted so negatively by this thing.
Yeah. So Jake, was my ex-wife's cousin. And so my ex-wife at the time, she was out of town at a family member's house that she'd gone with, and there was a reason why I couldn't go. It might have had to do with work or something. So I had to call her and tell her that Jake is dead. And all the other witnesses started showing up to the house, and this is just the horrible part too. It's like Jake's mom was, they're all crazy people anyway. So she's even crazier because she's just telling things. She's like, I knew what he was going to do last night. He was going to kill himself months ago, and we stopped him. And he said he was going to go back out in the garage last night for peace and quiet. So I went and did the dishes because I knew you guys were all going to be here today. And I just had to let him go. So what she fucking said. And so, we all hear that. I'm dead serious, man. This is what she said to
Oh, I believe it.
many people. But this is the mental illness too. That's like this religion. They don't let people even contemplate getting help for like mental illness in the way that they really need to. And so,
because they'd realize where a lot of the problem was coming from, and then they'd leave Jehovah's Witnesses.
right. So like nights before too, he killed himself. Like my oldest brother, the Heart of Gold guy that everybody loved, he was Jake's like counselor, his elder. And he had a talk with Jake and stuff like that. And Jake was a really good guitarist. He could play the guitar really well. He loved heavy metal music and stuff like that. So, I'm sure the conversation was something like, do you think this music helps you? I don't know if this is what my brother said to him. And I don't think it would have been like that because he's just too nice. It's just my brother's a really sweet guy. So it's like he said something that just the next reaction is the most extreme. And then they called, Jake's parents call my brother up and they're like, he's out in the backyard burning all of his guitars. And they're like, did you tell him to do that? He's like, I never told him to do that. I didn't say anything like that. And it's because it's one extreme or the other. There's no balance whatsoever. It's like he's just losing his mind because it's like, I'm either in or I'm out. There's all these things in hindsight I'm seeing as I even talk about this that you're just like, duh, duh.
Everything is seen in black and white terms.
Yes, it's horrible.
You're either wicked or you're righteous. You'll live or you'll die.
Right.
And ultimately, I mean, it's not any one person to blame for something like that. A person, has been affected a certain way. It's psychologically impacted them that way. It's really sad. And then their pain becomes everyone's pain in this situation. And it's just,
yeah. So, I mean, then they have my brother do the, the talk, the funeral talk. And it's just more trauma, with no grief counseling, like literally none. And so like after his death, then I'm like blaming myself. Like, oh, I gave him Xanax before. Like I gave him this, I did all these things and you blame yourself when it's like, of course, that's ridiculous. But at the time, you don't know that. And dude,
we all want to feel like we could have control over something like that.
Right.
That's normal as humans. We don't want to see these things happen.
Right.
And we want to be able to try to prevent them somehow.
Right. And it's just you're going to hear things that it's just one thing after the other once this event happened. So then like 2 weeks after that funeral, my ex-wife and I are driving to work and this SUV cuts in front of us at 80 miles an hour and hits the guardrail and wraps the guardrail around their vehicle. So I pull over and run out and it's terrible, man. Like then a helicopter has to land and lift these people and stuff. So I'm just like, it's just seeing too much of this stuff. And then I change jobs. I get a job as a CAD modeler, 3D modeler, same programs they used to make like animated movies, like 3ds Max, stuff like that, but it's for jewelry. And I'm doing that job. During that time, my ex-wife gets pregnant with our first child. We've been married for 7 years at this point. 7 years. And we have our first child, but during this time, she has to stop taking antidepressants, being pregnant, So then that happens, and due to a switch is flipped. And it was the beginning of the end right there. One, I'm like taking antidepressants, so I'm not even myself all the time. They had me on Xanax, Adderall, Lamictal, Abilify, and one other one. Uppers, downers, all at the same time for no reason at all. Just stuff they give to like war veterans who are also messed up. And so like my ex-wife is like, calling me a drug addict and all these other things. And then I was drinking, not drinking. It wasn't like chugging drinks and like, everything I can get. But it was like the medicine that I was on was giving me night terrors that I didn't know were happening. But my ex-wife was telling me I was screaming in my sleep. And then I'd wake up with like a massive headache from clenching my jaw. And I would smell like blood in my nose when I'd wake up, like pennies from the medicine. And Cymbalta, that's what they called it. And it would make you have all these hallucinations while you slept. Anyway, so I'm on these medications just for no stinking reason at all. My ex-wife and I separate because we're fighting so much after my son is born. Not because I'm really doing anything wrong. It's just like, there's just weird stuff. Like, you know, I've got a new job. I'm a wedding videographer and I have to meet with clients. So I meet with a bride and I'm like communicating with her like, oh my God, looking forward to this day. Like, it's going to be amazing. Oh, you guys are, you know, like, are you, and then it would be like, oh, you're talking inappropriately with her. Like, no, I'm not. Like, this is a client. This is how you speak. What are you talking about? So then she gave like my messages to the elders to be like, you know, he's saying inappropriate things. So the elders want to talk to me. And I'm like, well, I'm literally not. Like, there's nothing inappropriate here. And the elders are like, look, man, this is not inappropriate. Like, what's going on? So they were like kind of cool and willing to help. And so like, I go back home to talk with her and they try to give me advice on how to talk with her about this isn't, you know, and she's hormonal, you know, new baby, stuff like that. And she locks me out of the house. So I call an elder to come over. She locks him out of the house. Like, this is crazy stuff, dude. I can't like really, I can't pinpoint one thing, but the big picture really was we got married young. You know, she's on antidepressants the whole time, goes off of them, realizes probably like these antidepressants made me somebody I wasn't, maybe. I don't know. This is just me making excuses, but I don't know. So anyway, separate. Then I come back, like I'm allowed, like we like reconcile for a little bit, but then like I start seeing that she's been having these conversations with another witness in a whole nother state on social media. And I'm like, you know, what, you know, kind of thing. But then it's like supposed to be innocent. And then it turns into another separation. And then I literally move out and get my own place this time instead of staying with my little brother.
So was she
And
talking to somebody this whole time? In other words,
yes.
so was she projecting and saying that you were doing something that she was the one doing?
Yes.
It's gaslighting. I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses are masters of gaslighting, and we were all taught how to do that.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
So then while we're separated, I have no idea while I'm getting messages, please cheat on me. Please tell me you've cheated on me. Please tell me so I can have peace and be happy. And I'm like, sorry, not doing it. I don't have any desire to do anything like that. One, it's like, it's just, I was a new baby and it was the happiest time of my, like when I was supposed to have my new child. Secondly, it was like, suddenly I don't have my child and there's something instinctual within a parent that all of a sudden you've got somebody you had your child with is treating you like an enemy. And then you and an instinct kicks in that your child's being harmed or kidnapped or they need you. It's something that wakes you up. This changed the way that I breathed. So I couldn't breathe anymore a certain way. I was having really bad time while we were separated.
You had a tremendous amount of anxiety.
Tremendous on top of antidepressants that were supposed to treat anxiety and depression that exacerbated it. Yeah. So
you're throwing everything at the wall.
Right. And so while we're separated too, I went over to talk with my ex-wife and my mother-in-law in this conversation I recorded. I started recording everything because I realized that they were going to lie and only tell the truth if it served them. And
they were asking you up front. She was even directly asking you, you go cheat.
Yeah, saying it. And then text messages. And then like, you're not a good Jehovah's Witness. You'll never be, just things like that that were extremely cruel. Like it's like taking somebody you thought you knew, and tomorrow they said, "Oh, I've been working for the enemy this whole time, and I've been tricking you." That's literally what it feels like. It's like night and day. It's a 180. And so then I'm like, what is going on? So I go over there to talk to him, but while I'm over there, my little brother calls me and he's like, I'm like, guys, I'm like, I know we're supposed to be having this conversation, but Dana, my little brother, would not be calling me like this if there wasn't something wrong. And so I answer it and he's not coherent. He's telling me somebody shot. Like, what? So I'm like, I'm coming right over. So I just speed over there. And when I'm speeding over there, I get on my little brother's road in the country and there's this SUV not letting me pass him. And I realize it's an undercover cop. And I'm like, oh crap. So I get to this cop pulls into another house that's sort of caddy from my brother's. And then I get to my little brother's house. And my little brother steps outside and he's got blood all over his shirt. He's got blood and like yellow up on his face and on his ear. And he's smoking a cigarette, which I'm like, what? I know his worldly wife smokes, but he doesn't, and he's smoking a cigarette. Long story short, a 14-year-old boy, his mom left his family. I don't know who they are, but this little boy like went out and laid his face on a rifle and shot himself in the head right in front of my little brother across the street. There's more trauma stuff, man.
And
Stuff
this
you
was just
can't,
some random kid.
some random man, not a witness, not a witness.
Wow.
And my little brother was over there trying to save this kid and just took action. The dad's passing out. And it's this whole other side of things that, the Jehovah's Witness cult doesn't help this. It doesn't fix, it doesn't have counsel for people who have seen things like that and give them what they need.
Well, again, right, their Jehovah's Witnesses' grief is
Mm-hmm.
deny that something happened. Jehovah will fix it in a new system. Don't feel your feelings. It's going to be okay. They're just asleep and
Yeah.
they'll wake up one day.
Yeah.
No reason to worry about it. Don't let anything get in the way of your faith.
Right. So I deal with all that. And at the time, I was editing music videos for my ex-wife's cousin who had like a rock band in California. And at the time he was a friend to me, but I didn't know him in person. I only know him through the internet and reputation and whatever. And he knows we're separated, but he'd been talking to me and I've been working for him for like a year and a half before all this happened and before my son was even born. So he'd been with me through all that. And he's like, dude, I just need to have a talk with you, man. My cousin, she's cheating on you, man. This is what's happening. You got to know it. This is the tall tale behavior. I just had a conversation with her. She denied the whole thing, but her denial speaks volumes. And he's like, you're a smart guy. She checks your phone records every single day and tries to find any number she doesn't recognize to pin something on you. He's like, get in there. You will see that she's cheating on you. And I refused to look. I refused to be the person that she was. So I did. I get in there and look, and it was like all day, every day, all night, this other brother, and I was like beside myself. I just was like, not to mention, you knew this person since you were 7 years old and you're in the same congregation, growing up. And then this is like the way it is. Not to mention, like, I mean, I'm not trying to be like, the guy's a dipshit. I mean, I'm not kidding, like a total dipshit. Just fucking brain dead dude, good enough to swing a hammer kind of guy. But besides the insult, it gets worse. It's like I find this out and I confront her with it, and then I get a restraining order. The police show up to my house with a restraining order at 1 o'clock in the morning when I was sleeping, and it was just, there's nothing, and it was full of made up stuff. Everything made up. It was only after I discovered the affair. So then I have to look like the bad guy, and it was full of things. He's addicted to drugs. He'll take anything to get high. He's a raging drunk. Like all these things that were not true at all. They were complete fabrications or just major over exaggerations to make me look terrible. And, so I've got a restraining order. I'd never even been to court. I'd never been confronted with any law, anything, or the police, whatever. And this officer, I'm like crying, getting this, looking at this, like I didn't do any of these things, man. And this officer's like, "Sir, let me finish," because it's 1 a.m. He wants an excuse to slam somebody to the floor. So I'm friends with that guy now, but totally different. It's
That's awesome.
how the tables have turned. Anyway,
Yes.
so there was that, and then it's just bewilderment from there. So then I have to appear in court. I have to get a lawyer and all this stuff, and I'm terrified, and I'm alone, dude. I'm completely alone because nobody's going to go to court with me. My own mother wouldn't go to protect me, so I had to go for a hearing.
Can I ask why is your family not rallying her? Like, if it sounds like her family is rallying around her, is there
Yeah,
some
dude.
reason yours isn't rallying around you?
It's only my sister did. And my
Really?
sister doesn't live here. She lives in Kentucky. And so she's, 10 hours away. But she showed up for court. But this court was just the first hearing was just about the restraining order. And during the hearing, her lawyer, this bitch of a woman, was like, "He threatened to kill my client." Never did any of that. Never said any of these words about killing anybody. And it just turned into you're arguing against lies, and you don't even get to tell what's going on because you're constantly defending against all these accusations that aren't even true. And before you even know what's even happening to you, you have everything taken. Everything. Your rights, restraining order, you're paying $250 a week that you don't even have in child support because you're being made out to be a deadbeat when you didn't end the relationship in the first place. Nothing. And so then you're trying to talk to the elders about what she's doing. And there's a restraining order saying you can't even hold your own child in the Kingdom Hall. You can hold him after the meeting when you pick him up at their house. These kinds of narcissistic things so that they get you on their turf and try to fuck with you so that then they can like antagonize you to say one word and break the restraining order by just saying even a word. But they can talk to you and antagonize you.
So,
And none of them are in trouble. None of them are getting counseled by the elders. And then the elders call me to say the police showed up to their house at 10 o'clock at night to ask about me breaking the rules of the restraining order. And the elders are like, that's what the law is, clergy privilege, like clergy
penitentiary privilege.
Yeah, we don't reveal what we've talked about, or whatever.
Can I
And
ask,
so then,
was the thing about you not holding your own child at the meeting, is that a way of framing
yes,
you to look
yes,
so that everyone notices,
yes,
hey, Darrin can't even hold his own kid.
yeah,
There's something wrong with Darrin. So they're just playing this
yes,
game
yeah.
to make you
Now,
appear a certain way because they know that again, appearance over substance, that's
yes,
what matters in the Kingdom Hall.
that is what matters in the Kingdom Hall.
Wow.
And so, it's so heartbreaking. There's nothing like it to describe
I can't
it.
imagine.
Like somebody, when you get counseling for this kind of thing, you're literally describing what a parent who's had their child kidnapped goes through.
Sure.
It's the same emotions. I still deal with it.
And Jehovah's Witnesses care about winning above all, right? Like they
Yes.
have no qualms that
Wait
their
till we get to
greatest
court.
hope is that they get to go live in paradise and 8 billion people are killed by their God in a fiery Armageddon. They're cool with that as long as they get to win in the end. They get what they want. They
Right.
don't, there's no empathy here. You would think that it would be, well, he's the father. Wouldn't it be in the best interest of our son to have both parents? How can we
Yep.
fight fair? But no, it's, I
Yeah.
have to destroy him and I
Yep.
have to get this child for my very own. And of
Yes.
course, the
So,
witness.
and during this time, I've got restraining orders where I can't see him. Then I get antagonizing text messages saying this new guy is a better father than you'll ever be. He loves Jehovah more than you. These are the text messages in writing. And so then, then we go to court, and our court date scheduled for my parenting rights and my time with my kid and getting that arranged is pushed to over a year. We can't even get that settled for a year. Our divorce finalized, none of it. So during this time, the divorce gets finalized, the papers get signed, she gets remarried and pregnant, moves to another state. She's not allowed and doesn't have permission from a judge to do any of this. She just does it. And her parents are helping her. Her grandparents are helping her. Now, mind you, the congregation I'm in, her grandparents sort of started that congregation. So there is a huge problem there. They're all like half the elder body is family.
Oh yeah, you're screwed.
Oh, I'm fucked, dude. I'm completely
Yeah.
fucked. And they're not willing to, they'll tell me over the phone everything that these people are doing that are wrong. And everything that they're like, oh, brother, come over to see me the night before. They'll come over to my apartment the night before to see me before I go to court, just to pray for me and pray with what I have to go through. But they can't fucking show up in court to say something. So at the time, I'm letting myself be abused. I'm letting myself deal with this abuse because this is my norm. These are my only friends.
Well, we were taught to deal with the abuse.
Yeah.
We were conditioned to not self-advocate, to do what others
Right.
want us to do.
So, this time I stopped going to the meetings. There was going there was so painful. It was like there was no reason to go. It's like everybody there, you get it right when you walk in. It's like, oh, you just feel terrible. It was like everybody's looking at you. It just, yeah. So anyway, I stopped doing that. Then I'm filming stuff for work. I was filming a concert that I got hired to do. That guy still never paid me. But at this concert, these people run past me and this girl runs past me and she like stops like a deer in the headlights. It's like, hi. I'm like, hi, how you doing? What's going on? She won't say a word, just and then disappears. Like, okay, that was weird, I don't understand. Anyway, later, this girl adds me to Facebook and I just start talking to her and telling her about like my life. And she thought I was some kid that lived somewhere else and would come back in the summer to visit my other parent too. She had no idea, like said that she'd had a crush on me, my whole life and stuff like that. And I didn't know her at all. And we just sort of hit it off, and I'm realizing like this is getting really serious. And I really like her. And she had just come out of a really bad marriage and had 2 kids and a little boy the same age, a month apart of my son, and most people in these situations, this would be a big mistake. You know what I mean? Because when you go through a death or a grief, a divorce and things like that is worse than death in this way, because death has some closure. This doesn't have any closure. It's constant pain. It's constantly reopening the wounds, stuff like that. So then I meet my now wife, and I realize like this is a normal person. This is how a normal person behaves. This is what a loving person is like. Somebody who's like loving. She's super nice to her ex-husband, who's actually kind of not doing some good stuff, and so we decided, I'm like, let's get married, but I have to get married in secret. I can't tell people that we've been together, So we, on our lunch break, after a month or so of dating, we just went on our lunch break on a Wednesday and got married at a courthouse and just, hit it for a couple weeks and didn't tell anybody, and at the time I'm living in my mom's basement trying to just get my life back together. And I just tell her one morning, I'm like, Mom, I'm married. I just got married a couple weeks ago, and her name's Casey, and I want you to meet her. She's really cool and stuff like that. And my mom was like, not mad. She was like, oh, Darrin, I was like, what? She's not a Jehovah's Witness, and telling her this.
But still better than that you got married.
Yeah, I was totally taken back.
Right?
I was taken way back by that. I did not expect that at all. Whatever. So my wife, Casey, her first meeting is I take her to the assembly. That was the first meeting after we were married and people knew we were married. So we went to the assembly.
Jump in deep.
We went in, man. We went full in. And she went to the assembly, and this is the credit to what Jehovah's Witnesses have right. It would be their ability to teach somebody how to study the Bible, how to find scriptures. Not how to study it like the truth, but how to find it. So what she was doing, so my wife was at the assembly, and there's a big screen, and she can see which side of the Bible he's turning to so she can get to which book, because she was raised Catholic, but she didn't know anything about how to study. She didn't know anything about the Bible. So for somebody, that first thing where you're being shown how to study the Bible and where it makes sense in your life today, that can be very powerful for somebody. And it was really interesting to me that I had a wife that was interested in the truth. And then I could be, I could look at that. You want to call me this bad husband and you know, cheated on me and divorced me. Now I've got my new wife who is worldly and look, now she's a witness, you know, and that's exactly what happened. She got baptized and everything. Yeah, dude. We got,
Whoa.
she got baptized and we all went into it. We were Jehovah's Witnesses, man. Full. Then my wife and I, we had our first daughter, two step kids, daughter. Then we had another daughter. So in total, I have 5 kids.
Okay.
But this is where things just get crazy. So while we are having our second daughter, my ex-wife has been absolutely horrible. Anytime we have to do a parental exchange, she's hours late. She's uh, inviting me to come and pick up my child in this other state from school, which is not my scheduled time for visitation, but what does it matter? She wouldn't have to drive as long, and I'll drive and pick him up and make a weekend out of it, whatever. And I would show up to the school only to be told by the police that are there waiting for me, I can't get him. This is like setting me up on purpose to just continue this charade because I'm not supposed to move on and be happy and like have this other life and have a new wife that's a witness because it makes her look bad. And that's kind of the big picture here, because she left the congregation she tried to make me look bad in, and I'm still in that congregation with my family and my kids that make me happy, and it just wasn't, and it makes them all look bad.
So she was inviting you
Yes.
to come pick up your own child at school, and then when you showed up, the police were waiting?
Yeah, and then a text from her saying, "You're stalking me." Even though I'm like showing the police, she invited me. Look at this text. And so then I just had my new daughter 2 days before that. And we just got home from the hospital and I had to go pick up my son for visitation. And the reason I wanted to drive all the way there was so I didn't have to wait for her. I could just be in control of my own time, get him and go. Well, that didn't happen. I had to stay in a hotel there because I was there late. I couldn't drive all the way back all night. I was exhausted. I'd been working since 4 a.m. that day. And so then this is the kind of games. This is just one of the many, and I mean many. Then like family members start blaming me for my friend who committed suicide years before. These kinds of things coming out, like handwritten letters coming to my house, trying to go be sent to my new wife, trying to tell her these kinds of things. She knows everything. Like she knows things that they don't even know, that I've told her everything about my life. She's seen me at my worst. And so for them to think that they could have like manipulated her, which is what they're used to, was a joke, because she was
fair, they do manipulate a lot of people.
Yeah, I'll cry saying this, but man,
but there's no humility here.
Yeah, I'll cry saying this. It's like my wife, Casey, she's like a godsend, if you want to put it that way. Like then she was sent, because it's like if she didn't keep me just balanced, you know, I would have lost my shit, because it's so painful to go through this stuff when you just want to see your child. So it just got so bad where my father-in-law was like, this can't continue. Like, this is so unhealthy. You need a lawyer, and you need to be able to, I'll pay the lawyer, you know, because I didn't have, you know, I was taking care of all this. And at the time, I'm trying to provide a witness to my new in-laws.
Well, I was going to say, your father-in-law probably wasn't a witness either yet.
None of them are. No.
So now you have outside eyes on this situation saying,
embarrassing.
What in the world is this?
That's exactly it. And so then I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed as a Jehovah's Witness. And then this is when things kind of start to fall apart. I had heard about the Australian Royal Commission a little bit, and I'd seen some of it, but it wasn't a full, like, whatever, you know. Keep in mind at this time, I'm still in. And then my son, who's 3 years old and 4 years old, starts calling me an apostate. And then I'm hearing from other people who are still kind of friends with us, we're hearing you being called an apostate. And I'm like, I'm not an apostate. I don't know, like, what would constitute an apostate, you know? I remember talking to the elders about this, like, what am I being called this for, you know? And they'd heard it. And I'm like, for what? So we ended up moving congregations to another congregation that's like town away, and just trying to take advice, which was put your blinders on and go to the meeting. And so we went to another congregation where there was an anointed brother there. And that anointed brother is Ramo's dad.
Oh wow. Okay,
There you
Ramo
go,
from an
man.
earlier
Yeah.
episode. Got a crossover here. All right.
I grew up with Ramo a little bit. Like, yeah. So we get to that congregation and Ramo's not there anymore. And I don't really know why, but um, I'm working now as a garbage man for a company it's owned by a brother, and these are guys I grew up with as well, and they're all of sort of associated and in the know of everything about my life that I've been through, and they're witnesses too, and I'm working for them, and both of them are elders, all three of them, the two boys and the dad are all elders, and uh, I had been going through court and the behavior of my ex-wife, and I'd started to just listen to podcasts while I'm a garbage man on the back, and I heard this one about Scientology, and a red flag just started, like it literally was like a bolt of lightning. When your critical thinking ability is switched off your entire life, and the training is to cast aside critical thinking, when it finally kicks in, it's like a superhuman ability, and it's overwhelming to where then you develop sleep issues because it's overactive and you suddenly see it. That's when the trembling in me started happening. I was uncontrollably like trembling all the time, like shaking.
Oh, the
And
cognitive dissonance of holding one thing as true,
yeah,
but here this information
yeah,
is coming that is
right.
destroying what you've
Yeah,
held your whole life as being right
right.
and true.
Right. And it wasn't even about Jehovah's Witnesses. It was about Scientology. And
Yeah,
it just described everything
it's
that
often
I,
helpful for people to see
e-
it through another lens
right.
because you're not so attached. You don't
Mhm.
identify with Scientology.
So, my new wife, she's in, she doesn't look at apostate material. I don't look at apostate material. But then my curiosity was like, okay, so then I'm down in my basement here, and one night I'm up late and I just decided to look up Leah Remini, more of the Scientology thing, and I got the episode. Lo and behold, in the episode, there's a UFC fighter in there. I rolled with that guy. I rolled with that guy before, had no idea he was a former witness and that his brother killed himself. And
Mhm.
so I heard that story and man, I was bawling. Uh, you're just, you realize that, you're not really, you're not alone, and that there is so many people have just been affected by this in such a bad way. And when
Yes.
you hear somebody say something like, the real spiritual paradise is being able to think for yourself, and you grieve for weeks over just a statement like that, you know that there's something really wrong. So then I got the courage to tell my wife, I'm like, can you just watch this with me? And she did. She was cool with it, but because she trusts me, but she was shaking too. Like, it made her feel guilty. She's like, I'm not supposed to watch this. And so then after all of the, you fast forward and it's just like, well, duh, this is, they made me feel this way in such a short period of time. And luckily for me, she wasn't in very long, to drink and started seeing the crazy behavior of these people. And for her, to have that balance, and for her to and her family to be like, yo, this is nuts. Like, this is completely not normal.
Well, yes, she also has a previous identity to go back to. You don't.
Yes, exactly. And everything I was being accused of being, her ex-husband was. So she was like, you know, not, not a drug addict.
She knew it was yet another lie.
Yeah, yeah, a drunk. So she was able to see, and so she even, I remember her arguing with my ex-wife once, saying like, "So you mean to tell me after all these things that you say that he did a complete 180 overnight and didn't once delve back into what you're accusing him of?" And I would have seen it because we're home together all day, you know. And then when he's not home, he's with other Jehovah's Witnesses who are elders, So stupid. Anyway, so we're in this other congregation, and I see this Leah Remini thing, and then I find the Shunned podcast and I see Ramo's story. I'm like, what the hell? What? Like,
now you're not alone on another level because you got another person.
Oh man, I just busted my phone out. They're like, yo, watching your interview right now. I had no idea, bro. Wait till you hear what I'm dealing with, you know? And I have old videos of witness weddings I filmed with Ramo there making jokes on camera. You know, it's crazy. So anyway, I'm hearing his story about his dad and this whole thing that happened and so then I decide, oh, I'm going to ask these elders boys that I work with who are in that congregation if that's true. So I did. I asked them, I said, hey, you know, I saw Ramo's story on this podcast. And they're like, you watched? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, listen, man, the truth does not fear investigation. And if you have something to hide, then you fear investigation. And this was me sort of starting to unravel anyway because of court. And they couldn't believe I said that. I said, and here's what he said. And so when I told them about Ramo's dad, who's supposed to be anointed, they said, they should have told Ramo. They should have never kept that story from him so that he knew his sister. I'm like, you mean you're confirming this? You're confirming that this guy molested his stepdaughter. She got herself disfellowshipped to get away from him. And she's supposed to be shunned her whole life. And you're telling me that this story's true. Like after that, I was like, all right, I'm doing a custody battle because my son cannot be raised in this religion and have being called an apostate and stuff. But I didn't come to that conclusion in my mind yet. I just went and got a lawyer. My lawyer reviewed everything, including all my text messages, the years of text messages. And he's like, why does this Jehovah character keep coming up in all your text messages? And all of it. And my lawyer, I'm like,
Jehovah. Like,
so
it's a regular person.
So I had to tell him everything. And so then he's like, schedules another meeting with me. And in this meeting, he has a stack of like paper like this, thicker than the Bible, from just the state we're in. And he's like, these are all the Jehovah's Witness cases in this state. And I got to tell you, man, they're crazy. He's like, then he hands me literature that they hand to a parent who's supposed to be going against against another parent who's unbelieving to help their child lie on the stand and prepare them for things that are just a lie. And it's like, this is the thing. If we're proud of our beliefs in the truth and these practices to keep us like in this great religion, why would you hide from it? Why would you need to tell it in a manipulative way? Because you can tell it in a positive way still. Let people manipulate it how they want to. But if you have to manipulate it, then you have something to hide and you're a liar.
So are you referencing the pamphlet that they have? So I didn't see this until after I had left. I have a copy of it in PDF format.
Yeah.
But I read through it, and it is basically, if I was going to sum it up, it's like, yeah, we know we're fucked up as Jehovah's Witnesses, and we know that it appears fucked up to everybody else. So how can we convince a court that we're not fucked up? How can we get you as a child, or how can we as a parent go in there, and what can we say, and who can we have present to try to muddy the waters enough to where we look good and he looks bad, or he or she, whoever looks bad. It is, again, all about winning. And I read that thing, and to be honest, I think that is one of the most damning things I've ever read by Jehovah's Witnesses. Just how, like, they know if we speak our truth in court, we are going to look like crazy people.
Yeah.
So here's how to not look crazy. Here's how to hide you're crazy.
And so you still got all this programming. So I'm, one thing is like, I always pay attention to like things going on in the world. I look at the news, I look at news sources everywhere. So part of my indoctrination is like associating everything going on with being a Jehovah's Witness, which is just something I had to unlearn. But you don't really unlearn it. It just kind of starts to go away when you're allowed to see the world outside of the Jehovah's Witness bubble, So my lawyer shows me all these documents and stuff, and he says, it's all going to come down to this religion, even if you don't want it to. And I'm like, listen, man, I'm like freaking. I'm like, they have lawyers, they have all these people. Dude, we will lose. I don't have that kind of money. I'm like, they will do anything they can to just, whatever. And he's like, my lawyer, he was just a badass. He was just like, look at me. Do I look like somebody who wants to lose? I don't lose. I fucking hate losing. This guy is like,
Yes, I like this guy.
he's pretty cool. He was a cool guy, man. He loved me too. He was like, just he took me under his wing and he did favors for me and didn't charge me money. So, dude, like him and his assistant lawyer, this woman were awesome. And he showed me all this stuff. I had to report to him every dumb thing my ex-wife was doing to try and alienate me from my child, the apostate language, all this stuff. Now, mind you, I was still a Jehovah's Witness then. My wife was a Jehovah's Witness. We went to court. We'd have to debrief the elders after court over the phone and tell them what happened. Like, did the religion come up? I'm like, yeah, this is what happened. And this is how they threw your religion under the bus and made you all look stupid. And so they would be asked all these questions like, do you ever talk about Darrin in your home? And this dipshit that, my ex-wife married is like, no, you don't ever talk about his dad in the home? No, we never talk about Darrin. And so it's like lawyer questioning to get him to trip up. And then eventually it's like, yeah, we do talk about him. And yeah, we talk shit about him. And it just all spiraled, but not before this people. They lied. And then their beliefs were when they were asked about certain beliefs about an apostate or calling them that, they lied about it. They misrepresented what the beliefs are. And then I would have to get up there and explain what it was like being in school and how, like, in music class, I'd sit out in the hallway because I wasn't allowed to sing holiday songs. So I basically never participated much in music class. And how, like, other teachers would come around and, like, scold me about being bad for being kicked out of the class when I hadn't done anything wrong. And I would just, as the humble Jehovah's Witness, you take it. You don't say, I didn't do anything, So that was my time even in elementary school. So I'm explaining all of that and on the stand and realizing as I'm doing this, I'm like sealing my fate as like a witness because I wasn't even prepared to do that. It was just a line of questioning I had no choice but to answer, honestly. So even there, I was being woken up on the stand in court because of the lawyer's questions and questions I wasn't allowed to ask myself. He didn't even prep me. So, because he wanted my raw emotion, he said. So, like, there were times where he'd ask me something and I started sobbing because I couldn't, like, answer the question because there were realizations hitting me that I couldn't even come to terms with or formulate into a sentence,
Wow.
Because it was making me understand everything I was a part of. Not to mention the people that were in the courtroom to watch this was my friend Jake's former wife who killed himself. On my ex-wife's side, all these people came to help her lie because I was attacking the religion when that was not the case. I was attacking her, trying to alienate me from my child by using terms like apostate, and whatever else methods she would use to try and get me in trouble or use other people to lie for her.
Oh, did you say that the congregation showed up in support of her?
Yeah, a lot of them. Yeah. Even another congregation. Even people from another congregation. So including the girl, the sister who was married to my best friend who killed himself, she showed up against me. Like in favor, like after that, I said, fuck you to all of them, like in person in a parking lot. Like you all are betrayers. And they hated my guts because I found out one of the sisters there was having an affair and I told on her when I was still a witness. And I'm just like, you all are a clusterfuck of a bunch of cheaters and you keep secrets for each other. And I'm the one that gets the short end of the stick and loses my child over your fucking lies, you pieces of shit. Sorry.
Don't worry about it. That's
literally what they are. They are pieces of shit. And they will lie to save face while somebody who's completely honest and following their dumb rules is losing everything in his life just so that they can maintain their image. Fuck you, asshole. Like, you're not a real friend or a person. You're an evil person. You're exactly what you claim not to be.
They will literally show up in court. I had someone on, her name was Kayla. Earlier episode, and she was leaving an abusive guy, and but he was a witness, right? Faithful witness, and the congregation showed up in droves. Her own parents, if I remember correctly, her own parents showed up in defense of him because he's the witness and threw her under the bus. And
my own mother wouldn't even show up because it involved the congregation and the elders were advising everybody to stay out of it when it could have all been dealt with if they would just stop their politics of what family that was and actually disfellowship all of them, because they've all created a problem in a division in the congregation over nothing. The problem is I'm sure there's money involved. I'm sure there's a sizable donation from each of those people every month. So there's that problem. So, we'll get to religion as a snare and a racket. But so there's all that. So not only that, it's during COVID. So you have to wear a mask in court. They have to rush through because of COVID. So you don't get to present all your evidence. So it's rushed and you only have 3 days for a court case that's built over 8 years. And it's the COVID era family court. It's an epidemic. You can read about it. So it's unfair for me off the bat. It's already unfair because I'm a man. Mind you, you watch the judge during this and he didn't like them at all. He saw the problem. And the closing arguments were my lawyers like, they hide behind this religion. This is one of the worst cases of parental alienation I've seen. Not because of whatever, it's the manipulation is that bad. And those were like the closing arguments. Here's the problem. All children have a guardian ad litem, and a guardian ad litem is a lawyer for a child that they have to have in a family court case. That guardian ad litem had been the family attorney for bankruptcies, property purchases, and things like that for God knows what, for my ex-wife's family for over a decade. Conflict of interest. So he didn't agree with me. He said, the child settled. It would be too much to try and change things because he's in school there. Now, what was lied about is that he was truant in school at that time. And they kept that from the court too. They're really good at lying, And so the judge's ruling was, I'll just read the one paragraph. The court is concerned that my son continues to be raised a Jehovah's Witness. There may come a time when the teachings of this religion are going to interfere with parent-child relationship. If this does happen, I'm the respondent. Respondent's relationship with his son takes precedent over petitioner's current right to make parenting decisions regarding religion. It says this will happen regardless if the petitioner is trying to make it happen, standing idly by and letting it happen, or trying everything possible to stop it from happening. If it happens, there has to be consequences. So he's already identified that the religion is being used, and it could be used with or without my ex-wife's help to alienate him from me. Already happened. It already happened. So after this ruling didn't go in my favor, it just gave them more ammunition to say Jehovah blessed us or whatever, and they got more evil.
So first let me ask, how did, for this, before we get to how things progressed afterward or whatever you would call it, how did, that court ruling comes down.
It was because we couldn't read the text messages. We weren't allowed to show text messages, which put in the sentence what her mentality is like and what she's actually told our son. So anything that you try to say she said in a text message is hearsay. So you couldn't show proof of all the stuff. Now, there were some things that the judge was like, but the judge rules based on the guardian ad litem. And I yelled at that dude and called him a fucking idiot because he said he was going to do all these things he never did. And he charged me thousands of dollars to do something to protect my son. Took him over a year and a half and didn't do his job. And then lo and behold, of course, he sides with people that were his clients for years. So it's just, dude, it's totally corrupt anyway. So it was kind of like, now at the time I'm talking about nonchalantly, I wanted to die. Like, I just felt horrible. Not to mention, I'm picking my son up at these very exhausting drives, expensive just to go see him. And I couldn't even work. It was so hard to work because I'm a creative person and you can't use that ability when you are extremely depressed. And nothing matters. So it was just my job was a garbage man and trying to just get through life. And I didn't, I had no retirement. I have no career choices. I'm remarried with stepkids and I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. And I've just lost a custody battle that was like 8 years of my life, this religion I'm supposed to care about and be accepted in. I fucking hate. I hate the people. I realize that they're not who they say they are. They're exactly what they claim not to be. I start looking into, old literature, and I've always remembered this one bound volume as a kid, and I remember it daily because it used to be like if it fell off the shelf, it would automatically open to this page because my mom had all the bound volumes, and it was a 1988 one that showed all those old anointed people with the yellow cover, and it said 1914, the generation that will not pass away. And I've always remembered that. And I've always thought, what happened to those people? Like what happened to
Passed
that? Because
away.
I remember being raised. Yeah, I remember being raised being like, I'm not going to die, grow old in this system. I'm going to go through the Great Tribulation and like all this crazy stuff. And
So
then it's like, dude, I started drinking like all the time. I was like, I could not come to grips with. Then like I'm going to go this is hard to talk about. So then in 2021, I'm going for one of my last parental visitations that I'll ever see my son because some things happened. So I'm on my way there, and like always, there's some accident somewhere because it's getting close to traffic. There's just vehicles everywhere in front of me on the interstate, and I almost got hit too, and I just swerved and pulled over, and I was on my earbuds at the time with my ex-wife, like, look, I'm going to be late for this meetup. There's just an accident. Oh my God, I've got to go. Because the truck that almost hit me and then hit another truck, the truck it hit was rolling in a ditch in a fireball.
oh,
So I run out, and a couple other guys from a semi come running over to help me. And this kid is like laying halfway out of the truck. And I pull him and drag him out, and he's alive. And his legs are not working. And I get him out, and I'm like, you okay, man? Asked me if he was okay. And he's like, yeah, my friend's in there. So the truck's like on its side, and the bottom of it's on fire, and the top is like over a ditch. So there's like a gap underneath of the truck where the ditch is because it's pinned like this. And so I could get under. And so these guys, I'm in board shorts, flip-flops, and just a white t-shirt, you know. And so I'm telling these guys, like, who's got a fire extinguisher? So they get fire extinguishers. It's not putting this fire out. And so I go in to get to this kid, this driver, and he looks at me, and his face is just, and I'm like, come on, buddy, I got to get you out. I tell him his name, and I can't get him. His legs are stuck. And then this kid burns alive right in front of me.
oh,
And I'm like, then this kid's brother shows up on the interstate and has no idea his brother just burned to death. So I'm trying to think, like, there's a cop here. The cop should tell him. Nobody's saying a word to him. So I have to tell this kid his brother just burned to death and I couldn't save him. And man, just everything's running through my head. It just I miss my own son, and you know, I've been lied to my whole life. And I couldn't save my relationship to my own son. I couldn't save this boy to get out of, and
yeah.
it was it was horrible, man.
I'm
And
so sorry.
I was stuck on that interstate while they had to get the vehicle out and extinguish it, and the fire truck showed up. I couldn't leave for 7 hours. It was that bad. And finally got turned around. I met a guy on the interstate that night, and he was coming back from his rehearsal dinner for his wedding. And I was a wedding videographer. And I'm like, look, I'm going to lose my mind if I have to sit at home tomorrow. Can I film your wedding if you don't have a videographer? And he's like, sure, man. So I tried to turn a positive into it at the time. And I had gotten no sleep, and I just went and filmed this guy's wedding. Well, he had told everybody what I'd done that night and what I'd probably been through. So I didn't even expect to get paid, but all these people start coming up to me at the end of the night telling me that they'd never heard of somebody being so kind and wanting to do taking a tragedy like that and wanting to go do something kind. And they handed me tons of money, dude, like a bunch of cash, and just I needed money at the time. I was so broke. And
Can be beautiful.
I'm just like, these are the kindest people, and I still talk to them to this day and tell them happy anniversary, and they just had their first child. And you know and so then man, something else happens shortly after that. I'm going to go do a visitation with my son. We have to go back to court because it's got to be decided what my visitation is now, since nothing changed. And she's now accusing me of some other crap. That was she was accusing me of drinking and driving with my son, which wasn't true. And then she got him to say it. So then it was like, there's no point to this anymore. I need my life back. I'm exhausted. I was working for a new witness couple at the time who owned a medical company, which is another story. This guy's wife is actually crazy. She started staging break-ins at her husband's company, and I was catching it on video. And then we'd be spending all our time not growing the company, but looking for who's breaking into this place. No, this crazy lady has delusions of grandeur, and nobody's gotten her help. They just call it Satan. So then they're not paying me on time. I just lost my son. I blew up at him and I said, fuck you. You people are crazy. I'm out of here.
Hey, quick announcement here. Some of you don't know, but I have a project dedicated to bringing in career and small business help into our community of survivors. If you'd like to learn more, possibly participate, go to theuprisingproject.com. It's linked in the description here, and read the page about our mission and also the page to join so that you can see the benefits. I'm bringing in resources and support, and you can be a part of lifting others up and finding help for yourself as well. So I hope to see you join in as we all rise up from the ashes of these groups that held us back.
A real humble person, a real person of God, are people who they don't project what they are. You know what they are, and then they're willing to tell you they're always working on their best self. Jehovah's Witnesses are nothing like that. They are a projection of that image, and they want to be that image, and they want that image to be presented to other people in their community, so that their religion looks wholesome and it's the best and one true religion. The problem with that is it creates the dishonesty, the deception, because when you do screw up, there's the fear of not bringing reproach on Jehovah's name. Now, me as now a trained marketing person, that's a great marketing line. That's a great marketing tool. That's a way you keep your employees, great attitudes, and following the rules. New light, that's a great new marketing thing for when you have to, when you have to change policy. So those were all the logical things that just started to unravel. Then found out my mother was secretly seeing my son when I couldn't, and wasn't telling me about it. Just the betrayal, the constant, like, my mom never really loved me, and I wasn't going to the meeting anymore. I was just missing the meetings, and it was like I had made statements about Jehovah's a cruel God. I said, you guys use, at my house, I said, you guys use fear-based mind control to keep people in a state of, Mom, I've been in a state of grief my whole life. I'm this close to crying all the time. Why am I like this? And I've brought up showing me Schindler's List. Why would you let me see this movie as a kid? Why would you do this? And she's mad at me in my own kitchen in front of my kids. It's like, you're lucky God, Jehovah doesn't still strike people dead. And so I'm like, I could never say that to my kids, that God would strike you dead. And I want that as a threat. Like, this is insane. And this is where common sense started to take hold. And then I started to be like, this is unhealthy. I'm the cycle breaker here. Now, mind you, my sister went to court for me, and my little brother was already out. I can't tell his story because it's not my place. I'll let him tell that. But he was out before I was. But he lives in Florida, and he knew everything going on too. But my sister came here to watch it, and she was not out at all. Her husband was. Her husband left because he was a ministerial servant too, but he left when things he had a membership at the YMCA, like a community center, and they removed him from ministerial servant, but it was given to him through his work. And it was just ridiculous shit, dude. Just the dumbest fucking
Even if
shit
he
you
bought
could.
it, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, like fuck you. Like, oh really? We can wear beards now, dude. Shut the fuck up.
While
Anyway,
they're members of the United Nations,
yes,
the
exactly.
organization, you
So
find
that,
those
yeah.
things out.
So
You're hypocritical.
very hypocritical. So there's all that going on. Then my mom's doing this, and my wife found out my mom was doing all this, and my stepson loves my son. And so like during this time, my son gets, you know, goes goes away. I had to suspend my parenting time because DCFS workers, Child Protective Services, were sent to my house the umpteenth time because of the next false accusation. But this time, this guy thought he needed to see my two little daughters in their underwear to make sure they didn't have marks on them. So now I have no idea what I'm being accused of. And you know how bad that shit can go if a guy is falsely accused of something like that. So then I'm like, this is the end. I can't do this anymore. And multiple drug tests, cutting out chunks of my hair to do drug tests. Nothing ever found. Nothing, like, not to mention I wasn't, one. Two, it's just like, I think after the first one, you would be done doing this, but they weren't.
No,
And
they
so,
don't stop.
yeah, so I suspended my parenting time, which is a traumatic thing for my kids, traumatic thing for me. It's just one trauma after the other. Then my stepkids' dad dies. Just one thing after the other. Then we're not going to the meetings, and my wife turned in her disassociation letter, was like, I'm done. Like, it was just a short letter, like, don't contact me. And then it was because we got cards in the mail about the kids' dad dying, and it's the even from my family, and the wording is so gross and manipulative. It's like, this is not how you talk to somebody who just lost somebody. That's how a Jehovah's Witness talks to somebody and kids. And it said things like, sorry your dad died. We know you're going to be sad. But I remember this script, like, just things you don't say. That's not how you talk to a kid. One, two, you don't talk to anybody this way who just lost their dad.
No, I mean, just think of the cadence you just voiced that
Yeah,
in. It's
yeah,
this detached, robotic,
yes,
fake caring.
right. And it was from my oldest brother, the heart of gold guy, who I used to just love and respect. And I've lost all respect because I realized he's just a trained employee who's not thinking for himself.
Yeah.
And when I talked to him, last time I talked to him, he hung up on me because I straight up told him that, this is abusive. And they're just absolute hypocrites. And they're the worst hypocrites because they claim to be nothing like the people they don't want to be like. And it's even worse. And it's damaging because you lose your whole family over it. So,
oh yeah, they destroy lives.
So then my wife sends in her letter. Then there's open house for my kids to go to school. My mom tells me she wishes she could be there, but she can't because of the other grandkids. And I'm like, well, you can't be there anyway. And you wouldn't be invited because you would ignore Casey, my wife, because of your rules. And you're not going to set that example in front of my kids. So until you can learn to act like an adult and treat my wife with some respect, you're never seeing your grandkids again. Two can play that game. And this is what your religion's doing to me. And these are your fucking people that you tried to involve me with. These are your fucking people. And that was the last thing I said to my mom, was these are your fucking people. And she hung up on me, blocked my number. So as of a week ago, I'm disassociated. I sent in my letter. I wrote it out very carefully. It covers everything, man. It goes from the divorce, like how bad that was, the tragedies that I've had to see, the way that all of you never stepped up and even you could tell me over the phone, what these people were doing to me, but you couldn't protect me. And then I went into Australian Royal Commission, Ramos story, all these things. And I'm like, and then at the end of it, I said, if you didn't want us leaving or want us to become, quote, apostates, maybe you should protect your members from your other abusive members and steering us in that direction. Because that's exactly what you did. And then I put in there, like, I thought I loved all of you. I thought all of you were my friends, and I said, but I'm realizing, quote, I never knew you. And then I also put in there, like, how I said, what happened to religion as a snare and a racket? I've become a hunter in the last decade and I hunt animals. A snare is something an animal cannot get out of, but they sometimes do. And if they do, They take damage with them the rest of their lives. That often kills them. That's what a snare is, and a racket makes money. So what happened? Did the light get brighter, or did you guys make money? Because that's exactly what's happened. And then I said, a cult keeps people tethered because there's no way out. And I just said, I quoted scriptures constantly in there. It basically said, this is get out of her. There's so many people that have called me, and they're physically and mentally out and forever trapped because they can't get out of her. Get out of her, my people. That it's like I called them Babylon the Great in it. It's
Are you
just
talking about like PMOs who are in and
yep. They've contacted me. There's several of
don't
them.
want to leave because they don't want to
They
lose their
can't.
family.
Yeah, they're trapped. Yeah, they're trapped.
They can leave,
Yeah,
but
they could leave,
hurt.
but they lose everything. They're fine just pretending.
Freedom is going to come with a great cost.
Yeah, and I'm not one of those people that can just pretend. I can't be fake. People can't stand me. People either love me or they hate me.
We were taught to care about and to value truth, right?
Yeah.
Not the truth, but actual truth.
Yes.
And if we search for real truth, then we start seeing that what was the truth is not true.
Right. So I've got my disassociation letter in, and that's sort of the end of that. I'd gone to explore a lawyer recently here to get my visitation back. He's like, you can get visitation whenever you want. He's like, that's no problem there. I would try just sending a text first to see what happens, because if anything, it'll give you a heads up to see how much you're going to have to save, because I guarantee you they've already turned him, with my experience, they've already turned him against you, and you are going to be in for a fight until he's 18, and you're going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars in family court. So I didn't text, but I didn't know this. My stepson had gotten through the game Roblox on his tablet, found my son, and started talking to him. It was horrible. He said he's not allowed to talk to us. I'm a sick liar. My mom showed me. Literally said my mom showed me, and said my dad got rid of me. All of this stuff. I hate my dad.
My mom showed me.
What she probably did was showed him something that was a text message or a court document to say that I suspended my parenting time, which to her, she probably read it in such a way where it says that I got rid of him. So one, why would you ever tell that to a child?
No, you never.
No, that's child abuse. And so I immediately emailed this guardian ad litem, just emailed him just to say, nice fucking job, loser. I don't give a fuck. What are you going to do? I don't even see my son. And this is exactly what I said was going to happen. And in 2 years, the 2 years between my suspended parenting time and now, here it is. I'm shunned by the whole religion, my own family. And now this. I'm pretty sure the judge wrote about this in his ruling. So I do have a case. I have a case to go back, but at what cost?
You can win legally. Let's say you won legally.
Win legally. What I want actually is my son later, because every boy wants to know his dad. I was one of them. I didn't know my dad growing up, and I know him now, after all this time. But you always go and find it, because I was told how shitty my dad was growing up. Well, he was shitty because my mom was Jehovah's Witness. He had a drinking problem and didn't get help. He got reprimanded all the time. And so he can't go and ever survive in an environment like that. And he doesn't want to be a Jehovah's Witness. So same thing with my stepdad. Didn't want to be a Jehovah's Witness, had to just whatever. And it's just, dude, it's just, a wife isn't trained to be a good wife if you're not an elder. If you're not following all the rules in such a way. Anyway, I digress on that.
Do you know today also, because part of all of this would also be, where is your son as far as the witnesses, right? Because they have certain things that would turn him against you, right? He may see you a certain way. Do you know if your son believes this stuff?
I wouldn't say believe it, but I'm sure he's told to believe it, because nobody really, when they're raised in it, you only believe what you're told you believe. If you've never explored anything to actually challenge your own beliefs, I wouldn't
coercion,
say coercion. But yeah, I'm sure, because he says he's not allowed to talk to me and talk to his siblings. And so then he said, my stepson responds and says, your mom's a liar. She's lying. That's not true. Darrin loves you. All that was his responses. And so then he goes and gets his mom and tells his mom, and his mom comes back and messages my kids and says, we don't use name calling here. And there was no name calling. It was just them saying she's a liar.
Come on.
But that's the kind of person she is.
Apostate's a name calling.
Yeah, I know, dude. It's next level evil.
I know what you're saying she is. I get that. I get
it's
that.
extreme. Like anything they can do to divert from the responsibility. There's no response. So it's like, let's say you're having a discussion about you did this, you had an affair and led this whole thing into this whole tragedy. You like a fucking idiot. Like, you called me a fucking idiot. Let's talk about that this whole time. Yeah, that's kind of how that is. That's how they argue
the subject instead of talking.
That's how they all are.
You clearly had me nailed down.
You're yelling at me. Yes. Yeah, I can't answer. You're yelling at me.
Yeah,
I'm gonna yell even worse. Like, it's just the injustice is hard to live with. It is.
It's a court of law, not a court of justice.
These people still don't get disfellowshipped. Nothing happens to them. And I'm still without nothing. Nobody gets anything. Like, I still lose. But this is the kind of manipulation that they do. They can gaslight. Like, they have the ability to gaslight people, I've learned, to think they heard something they didn't hear or see something they didn't see.
Oh, Darrin, my next so I do episodes in between these interviews now.
Yeah.
And my series is about that I'm just about to start is about gaslighting.
Yeah.
I guess it may come out before this episode in the production process. But anyway, gaslighting is everything to Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah.
The entire structure is to get you to doubt yourself so that you have to listen to them. You're just a good for nothing sinner and slave of Jehovah. God talks to them. You got to listen to them.
Dude, I have a question for you too. Is it difficult being the fact that you were raised a Jehovah's Witness and we were that way once? I was that person. I was a gaslighter.
I talk about it in one of the episodes.
I probably was all these things that I'm talking about what these people are like.
Sure.
But now it's like you're at such a different level that sometimes you feel like the only person in a room who's like I don't know if self-aware is the right word, but like, is anybody, you feel very outcast. You feel like you just don't belong with anybody. There's not many people that can get or relate to you.
Let's just say there's a lot to learn about what it is to be human.
Yeah.
And understanding some basic psychology, not just so that we can try to bond with others who aren't like us as well, but also, I mean, I will say that as I move throughout the world, I see it differently, I think, than a lot of people.
Yeah.
And that can be a lonely place at times. But I also realize that I'm not alone. And there are a lot of other people who see things too.
Yeah.
And we're all on our path of growth somewhere.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are pretty stuck. But
yeah,
I've learned a lot about, and look, I talk to people all day in my coaching practice. Like I said, talk to like 6 ex-Jehovah's Witnesses a day or people from other groups at times. And we're not alone. Narcissism is everywhere. And there are a lot of people who have been impacted. And I have a lot of people who listen to this channel who were never Jehovah's Witnesses or in any other cult, but they had narcissistic parents.
Yeah.
And there's just a lot of us who've been through a lot of lies in our lives. And we've had to search for truth. Run with those who search for truth and run like hell from those who claim to have found it.
Yeah.
And keep searching, keep growing. And there's other seekers out here.
Yeah. Yeah.
You find them.
I found a few.
Of it really is a lot of healing is just about learning to actually love ourselves for the first time and to start life with that place and then to incorporate loving others and bringing them into it. But we were taught to hate ourselves and to disown ourselves.
Yeah. That's basically, there's a lot of mistakes I made and decisions I made that weren't good for me. It's just what I did because, who cares about me? You just don't.
Yeah. I can take it. I can tolerate
Mhm.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
A
I
low bar
mean,
for life.
yeah. Yep. So this does has like a happy ending. I mean, man, I've met really cool people, started, doing, for the first time, I'm not scared, worried about money. And I'm not even I'm just, it, it's amazing what good things happened immediately once I cut all of that off. It was like immediate. It was like the hardest thing I've ever done to um, suspend my parenting time and move and just completely cut that side off and send in my letter and all this stuff. I went and got a counselor. I talked to him not very long, and he's an AA guy, so he's wanting me to go to like AA meetings, but then realized that I'm not an alcoholic and I don't need AA. It's like one-on-one. And he was very familiar with Jehovah's Witnesses, and he's had to counsel many people over the years. And he just basically told me, he's like, what you're going through is an identity crisis. You don't know who you are. You have no clue who you are. And I'm like, exactly. And
Well,
yeah. So
shame is addiction fuel.
yes,
And
yes.
shame is what Jehovah's Witnesses
Hmm.
use,
Hmm.
especially at the end,
Yeah.
calling you an apostate, the worst
Hmm.
thing you could be to Jehovah's
Yeah.
Witnesses. Guilt is I did a bad thing, shame is I did a bad thing, so I'm a bad person.
Yeah.
And Jehovah's Witnesses cut to, they moralize everything. Everything is seen as a matter of choice and a
Yeah.
matter of your value as a human being.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, they want you to feel shame. You're a
Hmm.
bad person, Darrin. And
Hmm.
that's just not the truth.
No.
Not truth
No,
at
actually,
all.
I'm a better moral character than all those sons of bitches there that I mean, I'm
I
like,
get it.
I watched these people's eyes
Yeah.
when they had to lie and they couldn't look at me. Like I watched them cower. I watched all of them just, I don't want anything to do with this. I can't tell the truth here. So I mean, I feel a lot better as a person now that this is all gone. I'm sad because my own twin brother has nothing to do with me. He lives a town away. My mother has nothing to do with me. I called her last or a week and a half ago because of the messages that were going to my stepkids from my son. Like, I just wanted to hear my mom say, like, do you not know this is child abuse? Do you realize what you're a part of? Like, you're seeing my son when I can't see him, but you're doing this to spite me, and you let him be taught this about me when you know what's true and what isn't. I was falsely accused of all kinds of things. You knew that. Why would you go along with these people? Why would you betray your own child like that? There's no feeling like I don't have parents. I didn't grow up with loving parents. I don't have them. They're just, my dad was not there. I don't have much in common with him. I talk to him, but there's not much to talk about. And then my mom is an unloving person. I don't feel safe with her. She doesn't give me a home feeling. And so it's just the empty thing. I'm close with my father-in-law. A lot of my skills and things that I've developed over the last 8 years, 9 years, was my father-in-law helping me and just giving me life skills I needed, you know, just basic
Well,
things.
whoever your mom was probably died a long time ago
Yeah,
when
she had a
she
traumatic childhood. And so her only saving grace was Jehovah's Witnesses, and she never got help, real help for her traumatic childhood.
well, she went into an addiction. This comes up all the time, but I'll
Yeah,
say it again. She went into an addiction herself. She's addicted to an
being
ideology
cannot
and a
miss the
cult that
meetings.
keeps her
Yeah,
busy and
yeah,
dominates literally every
right.
waking hour of her life. It's the fix
Yep.
she needs all the time.
Yep, that's exactly right. And she even tried to explore her abusive childhood and go back to her stepmom and talk about it, and they all treated her like shit. And so she's literally doing the exact same thing to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
So
I'm sorry.
yeah, it's what it is. It's like, man, at this point, it's my wife, my in-laws, my kids, my small team, my boss, and small team, my friends, and that's really it, man. That's like all I know. I don't really know how to get close to people much. I'm close with a few people, but it's just sort of like it's not the same. It's very different. Um,
You can heal and you can
yeah,
learn those things over time. When I work with people and get to see them do that,
yeah,
it does take time. Healing is a process, not an event. And it takes time and the courage to look at some things and to go back and clean up some messes of the past, so to speak, by making peace with some things, to
Mm-hmm.
understand the players and how it all got to be that way.
Yeah.
And then to understand yourself, and then to start learning about yourself and who you are and what you want out of this life, so that then you can go have it and show your kids how to do the same thing. And there's a beautiful life that can exist, but you don't just walk away from cult involvement for
Mm-hmm.
decades and the daily abuse of all of that, and just like, well, I'm out of it, life's good now.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly there are good things to life, but it does take active participation in working on it. And I'm not, um obviously I believe in what I do, or I wouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I work with lots of people who've gotten a lot of help through what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Therapy can be great. A lot of therapists have a difficult time understanding the witness part of that.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you can find someone, especially, I mean, think about like domestic violence. So if you find a counselor who deals in that at times, that can be really helpful, because it's basically like we were in a relationship with someone who beat us daily, beat us down, told us we had no value,
Yeah.
and told us that if we ever left them, no one would ever like or love us the same way they do. It's like we kind of grew up in that kind of an environment, and it does produce a lot of similar results. It's just important to realize that it's the environment we came from that was the problem. It's not
Yeah.
us.
That's exactly
So
true.
therefore we can change.
That's exactly like what I've realized. It's just, and your life is what you make of it. And it's cool that my sister is out, because we've been able to talk about this. My mom doesn't talk
Yeah.
to her either. And my little brother. But man, besides that, I'm doing a bunch of plans for the future with new house, moving, all that kind of stuff. But
That's
I'm actually very happy, and it's the feeling of being free, where you wake up one day and you go, "Oh, it's not a meeting night because I'm not going." That's the best feeling, because that'll ruin your day every day. Every day
Well,
you got to
here
go to
we
the
are
meeting.
talking on a Sunday. You're not
Yeah.
sitting in a
Oh, when
kingdom
I saw it
hall.
was going to be a Sunday at 11, I'm like, "Oh yeah, just in time for meeting." But yeah, it's like, and it's like, anybody out there, there's nothing wrong with learning the Bible or even being Christian. I still consider myself like a Christian person, very more so than I was as a Jehovah's Witness. But it's like, it's okay to use. It's not okay when it's used to manipulate your daily decisions and make you choose between your family members, because that's not from God.
Yeah. Is this
It's
thing
like,
healthy, and is it helpful,
yeah,
or is this thing harmful?
exactly.
And if it's
So
hurting, then it's probably not the greatest thing.
yeah. So that's my story. That's basically my life story of where I'm at now, and the custody battle, the Jehovah's Witness thing, and everything that it gets brought with it, the way it gets complicated to try and have a family matter, when it could be very easy if somebody wasn't a narcissist and wanted the other person to look like the bad guy.
Yeah.
And
Narcissists are all about blame and shame,
yep, you can't, yeah, you
whose
can't,
fault it is. Well, Darrin, now your voice and your story is out here to help others. And I'll just go ahead and say, while I got you here, if there are other people who have stories like this, please reach out. Go to shunnedpodcast.com, submit it through the contact form, because I want to do kind of an expose with a lot of different voices on it, just kind of capturing the way that witnesses will try to destroy you over child custody cases, the parental alienation, the lies, the manipulation, just everything that goes on, because people need to realize that this organization, they're like religious predators.
mm-hmm,
My wife and I were going to a circus one day where a bunch of kids were going in,
mm-hmm,
and like they're parked outside of it with like their carts and their happy family life stuff. They're not in there having a happy family life, enjoying the day and the
Mhm.
circus with their own kids. They're out there trying to get your kids.
Yep.
And
And
it's
from
important to know that, I mean, they may think they're doing what's right and they think they're saving people, but look at the results. Do you think that Darren's son right now is in the best place he could be? Of course not, because he doesn't have his dad.
Mhm.
And that the happy resolution would be for intact families where we could all just love each other, and even if we
Yeah.
disagree about things.
Yep.
And we need to put more stories out here like this. And now, maybe Rainbow will listen to your story now
Yeah.
instead of you listening to his.
He knows. He knows.
Okay.
And he's crazy. He's a funny dude. But yeah, that's my hope. I just hope that people out there, if they're going to go through a custody battle as a witness and this stuff, like, go online, ask questions first before you go through it, and prepare yourself mentally, because you have to be like a statue. You cannot let your lawyer do the work. If they're bullying you, doing things, let them. They want their response from you, and that's the way that they can go, gotcha, he said the F word, like any little thing. I mean, I remember in court, one of the things asked, like, have you called her a bitch? And I'm like, yeah. Like, those are questions. The judge doesn't care about that stuff. They don't, like, so what, but it's like, that's the pettiness, and they'll make the whole morning busy of questioning, busy about how many times you've called her that, just to anything they could do to make you look like a bad guy. So,
Going after
just
that appearance again.
yeah, make sure it's the appearance. So I made, like, you left fire breathing bitch out, buddy. I never said that, but that would have got me in trouble. Anyway, so that was that. But I would just recommend anybody going through that, just look online, because there's some really good resources. That there's a website, Avoid JW, as well,
Yeah.
and they have all the literature for that child custody stuff that you will want ahead of time to give your lawyer.
Yeah, in fact, I'm going to go, I'll find some of that, link it below
Right,
in the
right.
description so that people can.
Because I didn't have all that right away. I didn't have all of it right away. So if I
Yeah,
had
I've
it
got
first.
some copies myself, and
Mhm.
I've given them to people that I've
Mhm.
worked with in my coaching practice and such,
Yeah.
because it's just important to know how they have a plan going in, and it's all about making you look bad.
Mhm. Be prepared to talk bad about the religion. Even if it goes in don't call them a cult in court, because there is the freedom of religion in the United States. So you don't do that. Just call it a high control, manipulative. A judge already has in his head that Jehovah's Witnesses are weird. So just show them why they're weird. I wasn't prepared for that. I was being woken up on the stand about my own religion while I was being questioned. I didn't know this, so there was a lot of things I learned while I was being questioned on the stand. It was,
You were
yeah,
forced to do critical thinking on the stand by your lawyer who was
yeah,
questioning this. What an
yeah,
interesting way to wake up.
yeah. It was
I'm
wild.
sorry I'm sure it was also kind of a traumatic way, and it's of its own to wake
Hmm.
up.
It was weird because at the time, I also lied to myself. I would lie to myself like, oh, it's just this one thing. You just got to talk bad about it this one time, but then just, you know, and I had an elder call me after one of the court days and say, like, I was telling him all this stuff, and he's like, I had a bubble bursting moment with my wife, and we had to decide whether we were going to stay or leave, and we decided it'd be best to stay. And he said the reason was because they had too many friends and too much time invested in it. And
Sunk cost fallacy.
and so then I was like, I was even more dumbfounded. And then I heard a woman at a meeting comment around this time about her husband being dead and giving this experience, and how she was on autopilot, and the only reason she'd go back to the meeting is so her friends wouldn't forget about her. And she commented that, and I remember hearing that, and that crushed my soul. Like, I was like, and I still wasn't thinking it's a cult at the time. I'm still just going, these are all things I don't like about it. But yeah, now I'm really out.
Well, congratulations on the disassociation. I know that's not always an easy thing to do either,
Mhm.
but it's often a step in taking back your own life, taking back freedom, not having to worry about any of it anymore. As far as, like, it can also be a way to set boundaries with people. It keeps
Mhm.
toxic people out of our lives in
Mhm.
ways. and can sometimes give us the space to go grow and heal
Mhm.
because we're not constantly confronted with what Jehovah's Witnesses will bring to us when we're not expecting it.
Right. Right. Yep.
You're on your way, and I
Yeah, man.
appreciate you sharing for other people.